Hello everyone, welcome to Dr. Spine. So, before continuing our pulmonary section, I would like to give just an overview about respiratory system and its components. So, as we all know that in fetal stage, lungs are not functional, and the first breath takes place after birth only. So, I would like to mention some of the respiratory rate during different stages of life. In newborn, it's 30 to 60. Early childhood is 20 to 40 per minute. Late childhood is 15 to 25 per minute, and in adulthood it's 12 to 16 per minute. So two types of respiration are there, external and internal. In external, it is between environment and the lungs, and internal between blood and tissues. In below I have shown the pathway of respiration. As you all know that the pathway of the respiration you can see on the screen, it passes from the nasal cavity up to the alveoli of the lungs, passing through all the tracheobronchial tree and all. Lungs are covered by pleura. As we can see in the screen that the pleura is divided into parietal pleura and visceral pleura. Parietal pleura is attached with the chest cavity, and visceral pleura is attached with the lungs here. As you can see here, this is visceral pleura, sorry. And the cavity between both the pleura is called pleural space, and it is filled by intrapleural fluid. So this is the tracheobronchial tree, which I am showing here in the figure. On the screen you can see the tracheobronchial tree, in which there is trachea. Let I show in the diagram. So it's trachea. From there it forms left and right into primary bronchioles, then this all secondary bronchioles, these are tertiary bronchioles. As you can see, right and left bronchi, which enters into the lung as primary bronchi, then it forms secondary bronchi, then it forms tertiary bronchi in the lungs, and which gives many segmental bronchi here, and that ultimately turns into terminal bronchioles. And after that there are respiratory bronchioles, alveolar duct, alveolar sac, and alveoli. In this you can see, if a whole bunch or group is known as alveolar sac, the passage this is known as alveolar duct, and the singular is alveoli, which are considered as respiratory unit. From the respiratory bronchioles to the alveoli are under respiratory unit. The types of cells which are in the lungs: two types of cells, alveolar cells type 1 and type 2 alveolar cells. Alveolar cells type 1 are about 95%. It is squamous epithelial cells, and which are useful for gaseous exchange, while the type 2 cells, which are cuboidal in nature and also important for secretion of alveolar fluid and surfactant. I'll tell you about surfactant in the next video. The respiratory membrane, it is a layer between alveolar membrane and the capillary membrane, where the gaseous exchange takes place. See, this is the capillary and here is the alveoli. So this is respiratory membrane where gaseous exchange takes place. So these are all the parts which play a role in the respiratory function. But there are different functions other than respiration, which I will be mentioning now, which is the olfaction, like you can smell, of course. Vocalization, from the larynx you can produce sound. Filtration of air, of course, and like if there are any dirt particles, it gets filtrated while passing through. Before going to body temperature, first let us see acid base balance. As we know that CO2 is produced as in many of the metabolic function, and CO2 when comes into blood, it mixes with the H2O to form carbonic acid, and as carbonic acid is unstable, so it is broken down into proton and HCO3 minus, and when this comes into the lungs, this reaction is reversed. So HCO3 minus and H plus combines to form carbonic acid, which is broken down into CO2 and H2O, and CO2 is expired through expiration along with H2O. Because of that, there is moist air. As we all know that the air we breathe out is moist air because of presence of H2O. Because of that, it plays an important role in maintaining the body temperature. So lungs also plays an important role in acid base balance and body temperature. After that, it's defense mechanism. As we know that I have mentioned here, epithelial cells secrete immune factors such as defensins and cathelicidins. These substances are antimicrobial peptides which play important role in lung defenses. Second is leukocytes. So as we know, neutrophils kill bacteria by phagocytosis. Lymphocyte Lymphocytes develop immunity against bacteria. After that, there is alveolar macrophage which engulfs dust particles, acts as a scavengers, and APC, antigen presenting cells. After that, mast cells. As you know that mast cells is a large cell resembling like basophils, and it produces hypersensitivity reactions like allergy and anaphylaxis. Also, it secretes heparin and histamine and serotonin like hydrolytic enzymes. Also, defense is through natural killer cells which release TNF and interferon gamma, and dendritic cells also acts an important role in immunity, and APC which is antigen presenting cells. So after that, this defense mechanism. Let's go with secretion of AC. As we know that endothelial cells of pulmonary capillaries secrete AC. What is AC? It is angiotensin converting enzymes, which plays an important role in maintaining blood pressure. So AC is converted into angiotensin 1 is converted into angiotensin 2, and in the presence of enzyme ACE, angiotensin converting enzymes. And synthesis of hormonal functions. This one, in hormonal functions, it synthesizes prostaglandins, acetylcholine, and serotonin, and many physiologic hormonal regulation is done by it. After that, the anticoagulation function. In anticoagulation function, mast cells which secrete heparin, as I mentioned here, is different mechanism. Those mast cells secrete heparin which acts as an anticoagulant and prevents the intravascular clotting. Also, there is one more thing to add, that in filter, it filters the thrombus. Like whenever there is a thrombus in systemic circulation, and somehow due to some reasons that thrombus is cut off and comes into circulation, and this emboli can be fat or air. When it comes into the pulmonary circulation from the pulmonary artery, it breaks into small vessels, as we know, and these emboli or thrombi are absorbed, and some thrombus are dissolved by the fibrinolytic enzymes, and all these are only applicable for like small thrombus or embolism, and it's not applicable for large emboli. So for small thrombus and emboli, lungs act as a filtration unit also. So after that, respiratory protective reflex, as we know, cough. So it is interesting to know about the cough reflex, that in cough reflex it's just simple that during there is a deep inspiration which is followed by forced expiration. In that, there is closed glottis. Because of the closed glottis, there is increased interpleural pressure. It gets high up to 100 mmHg, and after that, glottis suddenly open, which creates an explosive outflow. Like when a person is there, explosive outflow when the glottis open suddenly, and the velocity is about 96 can be about, not every time, but it can be about 960 km per hour, kilometer per hour, and its afferent pathway passes from vagus to the trigeminal, glossopharyngeal, and the phrenic nerve, and its center is medulla oblongata. Efferent pathway of cough reflex are from medullary center, which pass through the vagus, phrenic, and spinal motor, and up to the effector muscles like intercostal and all. In sneezing reflex, it's same like coughing, but in this, glottis is open. Here, closed glottis. So there is deep inspiration which is followed by forceful expiratory effort with open glottis, and in this the efferent pathway is trigeminal and olfactory in medulla oblongata, and involved are spinal nucleus of the trigeminal nerves, and nucleus solitarius, and reticular formation of medulla oblongata. The efferent are medullary center. From medullary center it goes to trigeminal up to facial, glossopharyngeal, vagus, and intercostal nerves. The swallowing is just deglutination reflex. In deglutination reflex, it's swallowing reflex that prevents the entrance of food particles into the air passage. Like while swallowing, the respiration is arrested for a while. That's all. Like swallowing apnea, we can say that. That's all for